Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, this is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle. Welcome to this episode of our show. Today we have with us Ruth King with Profitability Revolution Paradigm. Welcome to the program, Ruth.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hey, so let's just jump right into what you do, how you do it, why you do it. So what's kind of your background and what got you into this line of work?
Well, I'm actually a chemical engineer by training, and I don't practice chemical engineering anymore. And I found that I was really good with numbers. And so I have a real knack and a passion for helping small business owners truly understand the financial side of business, because what keeps you in business is understanding the numbers to make sure that you're doing things right. But nobody ever starts their business thinking, I'm going to do profit and loss statements and balance sheets every single month and I'm going to enjoy it. Because we don't. We got into business because we want to solve a problem, help our with products and services that do really cool things and help a lot of people. But as a general rule, that's what gets you in business. But what keeps you in business is understanding the financial side of business. And so I was doing a lot of it myself and had to find a way to clone myself for all intents and purposes, because my goal in life is to actually help as many small business owners as I can to truly understand and have a positive influence on them about taking care of the financial side of business. And that's not only financial profitability, it's sales profitability and marketing profitability and productivity and everything that they need to do to be able to, have the tools and systems to get and stay profitable. And that's what I do. That's my passion.
And that's a very what's the word for it? But, non-exciting side of the business, because, you think about, I help people with marketing. Well, that's the fun thing. Let's talk about these campaigns and how cool and fun that is. But the numbers, like you said, nobody gets excited about that. But the first Shark Tank episode that you ever watch, boy, Mr. Wonderful is going to nail you on what your numbers and know your numbers and what your customer acquisition cost and all of those things. So I think that is super important. What is the first thing that you would say to a client that really doesn't know their numbers? What's the first place you would point them in the right direction to start getting on that right track?
Well, to be totally self-serving, I wrote a book called The Courage to be Profitable, and it's written in English rather than accounting babble. And go read that book. It's less than 2 hours to read it. Just go to read it. But I want to do one thing and comment on a comment you just made, if that's okay.
Sure.
When you're putting together those marketing plans and you're putting together those fun things, you've got to know whether those fun things are going to, cost you cash or whether they're going to actually be productive and profitable for you. And I was just with a client, and we were coming together, and they do what they call the boring side of the business and the fun side of business. And we had to figure out a way to merge the two so that it was profitable on both sides of the business. And we came up with this really cool marketing campaign for the boring side of the business to get their maintenance done free, because that's boring on this particular machine. But we provided them with it's a margarita mix machine. And we provided them with the mix to be able to actually pay for their margarita machine maintenance. So they pay for their maintenance, they get the mix, they can sell margaritas and pay for the whole thing. And it was just, we had to work out the numbers to make that real. So it's, sometimes marketing things can be fun when you put the numbers on them.
Or sometimes the boring side can be palatable if you integrate in a fun feature to it. And I would liken that to some of the personal goal-setting type things you've heard, where it's like, okay, for the next 25 minutes, put your head down and work and get this task done. But when you're done, you can get up and get a cup of coffee. And so that kind of is that reward that you're striving toward to get that thing done. Well, in your example there, you put a fun little marketing twist into something that would also accomplish kind of the boring side of paying the side of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes you can take the number side and make it actually fun and figure it out from that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Because you got to do it. Why not at least make it a little bit more fun? Kind of gamification.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
what do you think? what, the question is, what keeps small businesses in business? Well, there's probably 4 hours worth of, comment we can touch on there, but what's the number one thing that you would advise a business that you got to do this, other than knowing your numbers, because we know that, but what's a more tactical approach to that?
What I would say is not only know your numbers from a financial side, but know your numbers from a customer side, i.e., which of your customers are profitable for you and which of them are not so profitable. If you take the 80-20 rule, about 20% of your customers will produce about 80% of your revenues, and I've proven this over and over and over again. So who are your profitable customers? Spend more time with them.
Yeah, and I've used that for years myself and said to clients, let's clone your best customers. So let's use the 80-20, out of 10 of your best customers or 10 customers, 2 are going to be super, super good, and 80 are going to be like, okay, that's great. Not that you're going to fire those, but you should fire maybe the lower 20% of that 80, but maybe the top 20. Focus on them. And what is it about them that makes them so good? Well, doggone. Now that we think about it here, they all tend to be engineers, or they all tend to be whatever. Start doing your psychographics and demographics about your own customer base, and then find out where they live online and offline. And if you find that so many of your good clients are high value, low hassle that happen to be engineers, well, can you join the National Association of, or your local chapter of? Where do they go online? Where can you be visible there? And I think that that's a huge piece in finding out where to then, going back to numbers, invest more of your dollars, because if someone could show you where you can invest $1 and make back 3, you'd be doing that all day long. Well,
Absolutely.
Maybe part of that is knowing the numbers on the client side and going, well, where should I fish in that pond?
Yeah, and your listeners should not be afraid to fire that bottom 20%. I had a client who many years ago, it's probably 15 or 20 years ago now, got so fed up with a few of them at the end of 1 year, they said, okay, we're going to make a list of all of our clients, and we're going to decide who we're going to fire. And they fired about 10% of their customer base. And they did it right, because they went to them and said, we're not going to be doing your work next year. Here are 2 or 3 places you can go. I called it with ruthless compassion, which I thought was really funny. But anyway.
Because of your name.
Because of my name, yeah. But anyway, they were afraid. They actually sat down. They took a deep breath and did it. Well, the following year, their revenues increased by some, incredible amount, because they didn't have to deal with the boat anchors around their neck.
Yep.
And the funny part about it was their customers really started appreciating him, and the few of the ones who they had fired wanted to come back, and they said, okay, if you want to come back, here's the rules. Yep. And they did, and their employees with a bad customer every once in a while go, I want to fire him, or I want to fire that customer. And they said,
well,
no,
probably if you were to go back and look at your, client base and look at the top 20% to clone them, and then the bottom 20% to move them along, I would venture to say that could take a process of whatever, a couple, 3, 4 months to identify, determine, and do it. But I would think if you did both of those, not only the firing of the lower 20%, but also the cloning and the pouring more into the top 20%. So, for instance, you may have freed up relational capital in the bottom 20% from just customer service and employee stress load, that now you say to your employees, okay, these people that we got rid of and moved on, all of that kind of angst and anxiety and customer service time and money even, let's pour that into this new group of people, and I want you to make outbound, gratitude thank you calls. I want you to, give them a whatever fruit basket once a quarter. I would venture to say that one exercise alone could make a massive shift in profitability.
Absolutely. Totally. You got it.
And what are some things, like when you say know your numbers, that's one thing to know them, but it's kind of like knowledge is power is really a fallacy, because knowledge is only potential power. You got to do something with it. So once you know your numbers, then what?
Yeah, that's why I called it the courage to be profitable, because you can know them, and if you don't do anything about them, as you just say, you might as well not know them. Yep. If you find, for example, I track everything from a standpoint of graphing it, because people can see what's going on a lot better than they can look at a table of numbers or looking at a P&L or a balance sheet. And if you just graph things, you can actually see the trends. And if you find that, for example, your current ratio, which is your current assets, i.e. things that are cash, are turned into cash, within a year divided by your current liabilities, which are things that have to be paid within a year, is starting to go down. And that means that your profitability is getting less and less and less and less. Do something about it. Figure out why. Is it pricing? Is it is it that bottom 20% of your customer base who is, that big boat anchor around your neck? I mean, why is it happening? Are your employees being less profitable or less productive? Are your costs going up? But, figure it out and do it, because the warning sign is there. You've got to figure out what's going on and then handle it so that the profitability doesn't go down, so you have cash flow problems, which is something that will put all of us out of business.
Yeah, agree 1,000%. So what would you say is one of the number one mistakes that business owners make when they finally get, okay, I need to know my numbers, and I've got the courage to take action, I'm going to do it? What's the number one mistake that they make that you can help prevent?
Number one, not getting a weekly cash flow report. Looking at what came in this week, what you paid out this week, and what you expect to come in and go out next week. You've got to monitor your cash every week. If you don't do that, then you can get bit in the butt. Because
if business owners do monitor their cash flow reports, how often is that on average? How often are they normally monitoring them?
Every week you should be monitoring them. And the cool part about
normally business
normally
owners
they don't even look at it.
So we're going from nothing to weekly, and at that point, would you also say look at monthly and quarterly trends to go, okay, last year you didn't do it at all. This year you've done it every week. What happened from week to week and month to month?
Yeah, you graph everything. I look at everything visually. Because
isn't that... So let's say that you had a business owner that has them and a few employees. Who is going to do it? Because if a business owner was smart, they're going to say, I don't do it, and I know I'm not going to do it. So now what?
Whoever's doing their books does it.
Okay.
All right. So
and how many of the business owners you work with still do the books on their own or try to do the books on their own? Isn't that a hurdle to get over, to say your highest and best use is not doing your own books?
Yes, and I always tell them that they can delegate the responsibility for doing the books, which they should, because they don't necessarily have the knowledge, number one, to be able to do it, but they can't abdicate the review of financial statements. So I told them, if they're using QuickBooks or something like that, go find a QuickBooks certified consultant. They're all over QuickBooks, the Intuit site. They can find them in almost any area in the country. Pay them 20 hours a week or however long it takes. And if they don't, because then they'll spend 20 hours a week doing the marketing and the fun things and all the things that they like doing, and know that this is least handled. So the bookkeeper, the last thing she does on Fridays is create this little report and puts it on the owner's desk. So he just starts to expect it. And so he's not doing it. I don't expect an owner to do this. I expect an owner to do what they do well and oversee the process.
Yeah, and it's kind of like getting to like the fun part aspect. The point is, you're not going to do it if you dread doing it. So when you outsource that or have someone in-house do it, it's getting done, but then you're the one responsible for knowing the implications of those numbers. So now if someone put in front of you a bunch of numbers with some graphs and charts, you would know how to interpret it because it's your business. But yet you really couldn't get yourself to that point because you weren't taking the discipline to get that in place.
Correct. Absolutely. And if they don't know how to hire a bookkeeper, there's lots of tests out there that they can use. I think it's the American Institute of Bookkeepers or whatever has a test that you can get. And they'll give you the answers too. And before you hire a bookkeeper, give her the test. See whether she knows what she's doing or he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Hey, so what about is in knowing your numbers, where's another hole in the bucket I would suspect would be in your own staff and personnel? So what are some ways to kind of track metrics internally to know whether this employee is getting the most output you need from their position? Okay,
let's talk about it in two pieces, because sometimes there's overhead people and sometimes they're the people who actually are producing the revenues. But I would always I do a thing called the productivity ratio, which is all of your payroll expenses, i.e. payroll, FICA, workers' not workers' comp, but federal and state unemployment and FICA, and take that number, how much you spent every single month, and divide that by sales. And that will give you a percentage. And it might be 10%, it might be 40%. Hopefully it's not, like 80% or over 100%. But let's say it's 50%. That means that 50 cents of every dollar that's coming in the door is going to pay payroll and payroll taxes. And each business is going to be different. Each industry is going to be different. If you're in a seasonal industry, it will go up and down like a yo-yo depending upon whether you're busy or slow. And so for people who are out in the field, or they're out producing revenues, you want to see how much revenue they are producing for their hours that they've billed you for, i.e. on their time cards or whatever else it is. And they should be billing at, a minimum in most cases of 80 to sometimes 100% of what they put on their time cards. It just kind of depends. And the overhead people, you want to make sure that they are productive, and you'll give them, for all intents and purposes, tasks and orientations and things like that, and you want to make sure that they can get them done in 40 hours, and so that they don't go to overtime. And that's how I would handle that.
And isn't it, am I remembering correctly that I think it was Tom Peters that was known, or Peter Drucker, that said, what gets measured gets done.
That's absolutely right, yeah.
You can't just assume people are just, got your back, and you might be plugging up one leak by firing unproductive clients, but another leak is flowing out the back door, which is non-productive employees not bringing in as much value as you need for them to bring in, whether it's admin tasks or production tasks.
Right, and it could be sales tasks too. I mean, every single salesperson and all the good salespeople want to know their numbers. They know their numbers, so they know what their closing ratios are. They know what their average sale is. So, I mean, these are critical numbers that an owner needs to watch. Yeah,
exactly. Well, we could go on for hours on end, I'm certain, but let's let listeners know how they can learn more about you and your company.
If they go to www.profitabilityrevolution.com, they can see we do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week programming that's free to small business owners and for small business owners. We also have a membership program that they can watch about 400-plus videos in the library. And if they want to get a hold of me, just give me a call. I always, if you have a quick question, feel free. I love questions. I love helping small businesses. 770-729-8000 is how to get a hold of me.
Super. Well, Ruth, it was really great getting to know you and talking about some of these important topics. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it, and I hope I helped your listeners.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.